There was something about the hum of a car engine that always calmed me. I used to think it was a childhood thing, a leftover comfort from the backseat rides home after baseball practice, watching the streetlights blur by. Now, at 38, married for 9 years with 2 daughters and a mortgage that felt heavier by the month, the sound of the car was the one space where I could hear myself think. My wife, Marissa, had hired the temporary driver 2 weeks ago. "Just until the new nanny's background check clears," she'd said, with that casual air she always used when she was already 5 steps ahead of me. The man's name was Elijah. Young, maybe 28, with the kind of lean build that said he took the stairs instead of the elevator. Quiet, polite, always on time. The kind of guy you never notice until you do. We weren't always this far apart. Marissa and I met in college, bonded over bad coffee and mutual ambition. She was whip-smart, magnetic, the kind of woman who knew how to own a room without raising her voice. I loved her for that. Still did, on some distant plane of existence. But things had changed, slowly, and then all at once. Somewhere between her starting her interior design firm and me taking on more consulting gigs, our lives began to run on parallel tracks. We still shared meals, laughs, even the occasional movie night. But intimacy? Real, vulnerable connection? That felt like a forgotten language. I first noticed something odd the third time Elijah came to pick up our girls from ballet. Marissa had answered the door wearing lipstick. It wasn't a bold shade, but I recognized it. Velvet rose. The one she used to wear when we go to dinner at our favorite spot downtown. I remember her slipping it on in the mirror, while asking if I thought the red heels made her look too dangerous. That day, she didn't even realize I was watching. Maybe that should have been my first red flag. Maybe it was. But denial is a cozy little trap. It whispers, "Don't be paranoid. Don't be that guy." One Saturday afternoon, I came home earlier than usual from a meeting that got cut short. Marissa wasn't expecting me. The house was quiet, but I heard music, something jazzy and low, from the Bluetooth speaker in the living room. Her laughter floated through the open window, light and unguarded in a way I hadn't heard in months. I walked softly, instinctively, until I reached the edge of the hallway. There she was, on the couch near the window seat, knees tucked under her, sipping from a wine glass. Elijah sat across from her, a little too comfortable. He wasn't touching her. He didn't need to. The way she leaned in, head tilted just so, eyes sparkling like they used to when she'd tease me about missing the grocery list again, it told me everything. I backed away before either of them saw me. I wasn't ready to confront what I didn't fully understand. That night, I asked her if she'd had a good day. "Oh, it was fine," she said, washing a plate. "Got a lot done while the girls were with Mom." I watched her dry her hands. She didn't meet my eyes. "Elijah stopped by," I said. "I saw his car." She looked up, paused only for a second. "Yeah, he dropped off the keys. I left my planner in the back seat last week." I nodded. Nothing else was said. Over the next few days, my imagination did more damage than reality probably had. Or maybe it was catching up. I became hyper-aware of Marissa's extra time in front of the mirror before errands, of the way she checked her phone and smiled faintly, like a private joke was playing out on the screen. I started keeping mental tabs. Nothing obsessive. Just enough to preserve my sanity. The first time I truly let myself believe something was happening was a Wednesday. Marissa had told me she was meeting a client in Westwood at 2. I left work early and drove by the house around 2:15 on a whim. Elijah's car was parked on the street. I parked a few houses down and waited. 10 minutes. Then 15. Then 25. No one came out. When I got home later, Marissa greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. She smelled like jasmine and something else, Sandalwood, maybe. Not her usual perfume. Her eyes were bright. Her cheeks flushed. I couldn't pretend anymore. "You said you had a client meeting in Westwood," I said, watching her carefully. She blinked. "I did. I saw Elijah's car outside around the same time." There was a beat, just long enough to make me feel like the floor had dropped out from under me. "Oh," she said. "He stopped by to drop off a fabric sample. I didn't have time to go to the showroom, so I asked him to swing by. You didn't think to mention it? It didn't seem important." She turned back to slicing vegetables like we hadn't just tiptoed past the edge of something dangerous. And I let it slide. Because sometimes the truth isn't ready to be confronted. But I was changing. Quietly. Permanently. Something had shifted. In her. In me. In the silence of our bedroom that night, while Marissa lay beside me with her back turned, I stared at the ceiling and realized the one thing I hadn't admitted to myself yet. I was beginning to lose her. Not to chance, not to time, but to someone she had chosen, even if only for the way he made her feel alive again. And that was a pain no words could ever truly articulate. I started keeping receipts. Not literal ones, though I did end up collecting those too, but the kind you log away in your head. Timestamps. Excuses. Glances. Gaps in a sentence that once wouldn't have mattered but now pulsed with meaning. It's funny how once you suspect someone of betrayal, you begin noticing things you'd otherwise brush off. A pause too long. A tone too sweet. A message dismissed too quickly. Marissa had started locking her phone. That was new. Not just the screen lock, we all had those, but actual locked apps. One night while she was asleep, I tried to open her messages. She'd changed the password. I don't know what hit me harder, the lock itself, or the fact that she'd never bothered to hide anything from me before. It was like discovering a secret room in a house you thought you'd memorized. The next day, I asked her, casually, if she still needed the driver. "Elijah?" she said, pouring coffee. "Yeah, for now." "Why?" "Just wondering. I could start picking up the girls again if you want." She hesitated. "No, that's okay. He's flexible, and it gives me more time to focus on work." Work. That was her shield now. Everything could be buried under the word. Meetings. Errands. Missed calls. Distance. All wrapped in that neat, professional package. I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. But inside, I felt like a man trying to hold a crumbling wall together with bare hands. 2 days later, I called in sick. The girls were at school. Marissa had left just after noon for a fabric run. She'd dressed a little too well for a day of warehouse shopping. That should have told me something, but I still needed proof. That cruel, inevitable proof that no man wants but sometimes can't stop chasing. Elijah's car was parked around the block. Not directly in front of the house. No, he was smarter than that, but just far enough to be overlooked. I parked my own car a few streets over and walked. The front curtains were drawn. The house looked quiet. I didn't knock. Instead, I walked through the side gate and around to the backyard. Our girls had outgrown the swing set, but it still stood there like a relic of happier days. I crouched behind the tree we planted after our second anniversary, the one we promised would grow alongside our love. It was taller now. I wasn't sure we were. Through the sheer living room curtains, I saw them. Not in an embrace. Not yet. But she was laughing, touching his arm. His hand lingered just a little too long on her knee. I recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same one she gave me in our early days, when we'd sneak out of lectures just to sit at coffee shops and dream out loud. That look was never casual. It meant she had let someone in. I snapped a photo. Not to use. Just to have. A receipt. That evening, I said nothing, Neither did she. We had dinner, watched a show. She fell asleep on the couch. I sat beside her, wondering how much of what we'd built was real, and how much had quietly vanished when I wasn't looking. The next morning, I finally confronted her. "Marissa, we need to talk." She looked up from her laptop. "Okay, I know about Elijah." Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She just stared, as if waiting for me to elaborate. "I saw you. At home. Wednesday." Still, no denial. No defense. Just a long pause. "Are you sleeping with him?" I asked. "No," she said softly. "But I've thought about it." That sentence did more damage than 1,000 denials ever could. It meant this wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a deliberation. A choice she hadn't made yet, but one she was dangerously close to. "I'm not in love with him," she added, almost apologetically. "But I feel seen." I laughed, cold, sharp, involuntary. "You feel seen by a guy who drives our kids around? It's not about what he does," she snapped. "It's how he listens. How he looks at me like I matter. And I don't." She looked at me then. Really looked. And what I saw in her eyes wasn't hate. Wasn't even anger. It was disappointment. "We've been roommates for over a year, Darren," she said. "You don't ask me about my day. You don't notice when I wear something new. You love me, but you stopped seeing me a long time ago." The worst part? She wasn't wrong. I'd been so focused on stability, on being a provider, that I forgot intimacy requires more than just presence. It demands attention, vulnerability, a willingness to be raw, even after years of marriage. I had let her drift, and Elijah had been there to catch her. "Are you going to sleep with him?" I asked finally. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I might have, if you hadn't asked me today." That night, I slept in the guest room. Not out of anger, but confusion. My mind was a hurricane of memories, doubts, and questions. Who was I really mad at? Her? Him? Or the version of myself that thought love could survive on autopilot? The next morning, she left early. The driver didn't come. I didn't know what that meant. But I knew this. The window seat where she'd sat with him now felt like the loneliest place in the world. A week passed. Then another. Elijah never came back. Not to our house. Not to pick up the girls. Not even a mention in passing from Marissa. It was like he had been quietly erased, not from memory, but from circumstance. And yet, the residue of what almost happened between them lingered in the air like the scent of a candle long since extinguished. Marissa never brought him up. I never asked. Instead, we danced around each other in a quiet domestic waltz. The girls went to school. Meals were made. Dishes cleaned. We spoke in logistics and schedules, not feelings. Our conversations were sterile, polite. Civil, two people sharing space, not a life. I started sleeping in the guest room more often. Not because I was punishing her, but because every night in our bed felt like trying to lie still on broken glass. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, she knocked on the door to the guest room. I looked up from the book I wasn't reading. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Sure." She stepped inside, clutching a mug like it was armor. She wore the old college sweatshirt I loved, the one with the faded logo and threadbare sleeves. I used to joke that it made her look like she was hiding in a memory. She sat on the edge of the bed. We didn't speak for a while. "Do you hate me?" she asked finally. I blinked. "No. But I don't know how to feel about you right now." "That's fair," she said. "I don't know how to feel about myself either." She took a deep breath. "I haven't seen Elijah. I told him not to come back. I'm not even sure he understood why." "You didn't owe him an explanation." "No, she said softly. But I think I wanted him to give me one. I wanted to understand why it was so easy to go looking outside of us. And the truth is, I was afraid you'd stopped loving me. I stared at her. Marissa, I never stopped. But I did get lost in everything else. She nodded. I know. I did too. Another silence passed. I wasn't going to sleep with him, she said. Not really. I told myself I was just craving attention. But I think deep down, I wanted to see if I still mattered to someone. You matter to me, I said. But do you still want me? She asked, eyes glistening. Not out of obligation. Not because we have kids. But me. Flawed. Hurt. Human. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I wanted to want her. I wanted to believe that what we had wasn't irreparably cracked. But something inside me had shifted. Knowing she had been 1 foot away from choosing someone else, it left a scar, invisible but always there. I think we need help, I said finally. Not patchwork. Not promises. Real help. Counseling. Time apart if it comes to that. She nodded. Okay. We sat in silence again. But this time, it wasn't strained. It was honest. Painful. But clean. Like the moment after a storm when everything is soaked but still standing. Marissa stood, lingered by the door. I still love you, Darren. I know that doesn't erase everything, but it's the one thing I'm sure of. I know. I said. I love you too. But we're going to have to rebuild from the foundation. Not just paint over the cracks. She gave a small, sad smile. Then let's not wait until it all falls down next time. She walked out, and I sat there for a long time, staring at the closed door, wondering if this was the beginning of something new or the end of something old. A few weeks later, we started couples therapy. It wasn't a miracle. It was uncomfortable. Messy. Honest. We talked about the distance, the resentment, the way small slights had turned into silent trenches. We talked about Elijah only once, and it was enough. He was never really the cause, just the symptom. Some nights, we still slept apart. Some mornings, we woke up holding hands. The window seat stayed empty for a while. Then one day, Marissa was there again, sipping tea, reading a book, her feet curled up beneath her like she used to. I sat across from her, said nothing, just watched the way the light hit her face. It felt like watching someone I used to know, someone I wanted to know again. Maybe we wouldn't go back to what we were. Maybe we didn't need to. Maybe starting over didn't mean forgetting, but choosing each other anyway. Even after the fall. Even with the cracks. Even still.